Thank you. I'm Shanti, and yeah, really lovely to be with all of you. Um, and particularly to talk about this topic of being light in mind and heart. Um, I came across a birthday card I received a little while ago, and it's a picture of Brahma Baba with my face on it. Some very entertaining brothers decided to use the slogan "Follow Father" for me, which was really nice. But there was a particular blessing in this card which really struck me, and this is years later. I'm reading this, and one line of this blessing was the one who constantly and make your nature the one who constantly supports and inspires others. Um, and it really touched me when I found this card after so many years, because this card was given to me almost 20 years ago. But I realized what it means to be an angel is to really make our nature such that we are supportive for others in so many different situations. And I think this is a journey for me. This has been a journey for me where, Baba teaches us how to serve with our hearts in a clean way. And when we take sorrow, we begin to lose our capacity to serve in that same way. Instead, we move up into our heads and service takes place from this space rather than from the heart space. And so I wanted to share aspects of how we can begin to come back down to our heart space when we're interacting, particularly at this time when, I don't think anyone who's joined us this evening will feel as though drama isn't intensifying. Everyone here is probably going through something or another from a settlement perspective. And whatever it may be, the sense and the feeling perhaps that is shared is that everything is erupting and everything is intensifying. And I think when we have this sense of time, this sense that everything is now moving into an extreme phase, then whatever has remained over a long period of time in our hearts and in our minds that we haven't been able to transform and address, it is this that is coming up at this point in our lives. And it will come up in so many different ways. But I feel for me that this is something I have recognized in my own journey, particularly over the last 2 years, where there's been so many very, very large test papers of the body, test papers of karmic accounts, test papers of challenging situations. And I think before they used to come maybe one by one, maybe drama would give you a bit of space between one and then the other. But now I don't think drama is giving us any time. It's when they come in full force, and they come, you know, more than one at a time. And so I wanted to share this aspect of what happens when we begin to when eruptions begin to take place in our own hearts, but we actually begin to see that in the actions of others as well, particularly when we're involved in service, or in a group dynamic. We can probably get a sense that actually there is extra upheaval taking place in souls around you. And so, how do we then begin to deal with situations without taking that sorrow into our hearts? And I feel for me, this has been a lifelong lesson that Daddy Janki has started for me, where I remember one of her classes, and she would say very clearly, each one should look at the state of their hearts. And I really like that line very much because In Raj Yoga, we can spend a lot of time thinking about how to transform our thoughts, and that's very important. But until we realize the connection between the heart and the mind, we don't know where our thoughts are stemming from. And this is an important aspect that I feel Dadi is paid a lot of attention to in her own life, in her own spiritual journey, but she seems to have taken this theme up of cleansing the heart in the West more than Baba, more than any other Dadis. So there is some secret here where she connects the heart to progress, and she connects the heart to creating a stage where we can truly experience love in our remembrance. And Baba's been emphasizing yoga a lot in recent Murlis, but particularly, I think, in either yesterday or the day before, he was emphasizing love in remembrance, to lovingly remember the Father. And I guess one of the things that I recognize um, when harmony is a challenge in certain situations, maybe it's center instruments that you're working with, maybe it's your service companions that you're working with, and there is some disharmony that begins to take place. I want to be able to just connect this aspect of outer harmony and inner harmony. And we know this, we know the connection, but in particular to what it means to being the angel. And I remember a particular class that Dadi gave where she talked about the subtle body. And she said, what is the subtle body? When we think about the angelic stage, we think about stepping into this subtle body, but she broke this subtle body down into the five elements, just like the physical body has five elements. The subtle body also has five elements. And she was very clear about these five elements. One, the first three we know about very clearly: the mind, the intellect, the sanskars. And then the fourth one was the conscience. And the fifth one was the heart. And these five faculties, if you like, of the subtle body have to be in harmony if we are to step into an angelic stage. If the heart is holding on to pain and we're trying to have remembrance of the Father, then that remembrance won't be loving, and that remembrance won't bring us that sense of that angelic feeling, that sense of being in the subtle. It will feel forced. It may not necessarily give us the sense of peace and power that we are seeking. And interestingly, it's all of these faculties start with the heart, because it is at the level of the heart that we can take sorrow. And it is this pattern of taking sorrow that disrupts us significantly. And when the heart has taken pain in whatever way, then the mind cannot be controlled, because whatever pain that the heart absorbs will project into the mind. And I recognize this in over the years where different situations has created sorrow in myself, to only then know that I have to go through a cleansing process to release whatever it is that I'd held, whatever it is that I'd absorbed as pain, and to be able to give that to Baba. But that sort of work is quite tiring work, isn't it? Where we repeatedly find ourselves coming into sorrow and then having to go through a process of forgiveness with Baba in order to heal. And, that it requires time. And, Baba mentioned, I think it was yesterday or the day before, where, this journey just does take time. You won't be able to achieve an elevated stage in a relatively short space of time. But the time we invest in cleansing our hearts allows us to become free from our past and allows us to begin to absorb Baba in our awareness more and more. I'm hoping I'm going slow enough here. If I need to speak slower, please just mention in the chat and we can and I can begin to slow down. Okay.
I haven't heard any notification, so seems like it's fine. We can
Sure.
continue in this pace.
Thank you. Thank you. And so one of the signs of um I guess the angelic stage in our own practical lives from my side is a sense of being light. And when lightness is present in our lives, that's when we know we're able to give because lightness is connected to fullness. And just like when the body is full, there is no desire to eat anymore. There is no desire for anything, even if it's delicious around you. In the same way, where there is lightness and fullness, then
Sorry, brother Ash. Just a Turkish translator just wrote it in the chat. It would be very nice if you slow down a little.
Mm,
Thanks.
sure. And so lightness and fullness are very connected. And where there is a sense of lightness in our stage, in our hearts, then actually we can begin to operate much more freely. We can begin to enjoy this journey a lot more. And one of the things that I know can create heaviness in our hearts is relationships, and particularly relationships where there are karmic accounts present, where there has been a give and take of sorrow over a long period of time. And in order for me to begin to heal these relationships, I need to pay attention to a specific type of effort in order to lighten the burden that I carry in my heart, and therefore then lighten the burden that I carry in my mind. And so, this aspect of the feelings in the heart that have been accumulated over a long period of time, they will repeatedly keep on creating an obstacle on our journey. And I know this for myself because there are many situations where I have absorbed pain in whether it's over focusing on somebody's weakness, whether it's holding some aspect of the past that I shouldn't have been holding, whether it's effectively looking at and their sanskars and creating a clash with other people's sanskars, whatever may be creating sorrow inside of me, the process of going through forgiveness, acceptance, and repentance is an important part of this journey. And there was a class by Gentiben back in 2011, which I found really fascinating because she was talking about this aspect of shadows and omens on this journey. And Daddy once said to Gentiben that 95% of BKs are under some form of shadow. And so, what is a shadow and what is an omen? And this was the clarification that Daddy had been providing to Gentiben in this class. And essentially, a shadow is when I come under somebody's influence in some way, whether that's praise or whether that's in a negative way. So either I'm influenced them by because I'm impressed by them, or I'm influenced by them in a negative way because I'm somehow reacting to them in some way. So this is typically a shadow. And I think we can probably look at our lives and recognize very quickly whether I am in a shadow at this point and whether that shadow is creating feelings of violence or anger inside of me. An omen is something a little bit different, where we have sanskars inside of us that can be quite strong. And when these strong sanskars haven't been transformed, they can control us. So there are certain sanskars in our journey that have been easy to, I don't know, resolve or transform, but maybe other sanskars are less easy to transform. And so when I'm able to see particular aspects of my sanskars and recognize which ones are controlling me without my wish, that's an omen. And that omen is interesting because no amount of knowledge seems to make it want to go away. Understanding it doesn't make it go away. So, what does make it go away? So, that's an interesting thing that we can explore again in today's talk. So, this angle of how can we respond to our suffering? And when I think of our suffering, I think of the pain that we, or the sanskara of taking sorrow that we repeatedly kind of trigger in different situations. And how can we then begin to not take sorrow from these situations? Does that just happen very naturally? Or does that happen when I start to pay attention and start to increase the power of my yoga? The other thing that I've realized in my journey as well is that there hasn't been the level and the power in yoga that I've wanted personally to burn some of the sanskars that I know exist in this one. But where yoga power on a daily basis has helped manage the sanskar, and we end up managing our sanskars more than burning them, silence or extended periods of silence have really helped to completely release and transform these sanskars. And I didn't realize how profound extended periods of silence have been in my effort making. We run silence retreats at the Lighthouse Retreat Center in Worthing. And one of the things that I've always remembered that Daddy used to always share is when the heart takes in sorrow, we have to spend time to focus on what is holding us back, deal with the issues, let go, and then start afresh. And so Daddy would always advocate that we increase the power of remembrance in a short space of time, intensifying. And so she would often urge us to sit for 3 additional 40-minute meditation sessions every day so that we can begin to introspect carefully. And Baba's been talking about becoming more introverted over the last couple of days. And I just wanted to pick that up because I feel, how do we begin to start doing the work on our hearts? Is it something that we can just move straight into if I haven't done it over a long period of time? I don't think it is. From my experience, this is something that needs the power of silence so that we can begin to create a relationship with our hearts again, especially if we have neglected our hearts over a long period of time. And that neglect almost makes our hearts want to run away from us. They don't respond to us. And silence begins the process where our hearts can begin to respond to us. And by respond, I mean the hearts can begin to let go of the pain that it's been holding on to. And so when we run silence retreats in Worthing, often one of the first starting points for most Brahmin groups that come is for everyone to really begin to see their speciality and their value. And why is that the starting point? Because when life challenges us and we face difficult situations, then often we will find ourselves affected by these situations. Yeah. Because when new test papers come, whether they're relationships or things are erupting or intensifying, then we will often find ourselves reacting to these situations, absorbing pain and becoming more and more tired. And as tiredness increases inside of us, then actually our ability to draw power changes. And so, and secondly, I think the ability for us to be able to see our own value diminishes. We can't see our own value. And I find that this first exercise that we tend to run with the group of being able to connect them to their own attainments, to their own specialities, to their own value, to the way Baba has guided them, to the gifts they've received, becomes one of the most uplifting sessions. Because as soon as we start to draw pain into our hearts, then actually we begin to lose our self value. And we also begin to focus on more of what is creating a problem in our lives, more of what is creating negativity and issues in our lives. And so we can't seem to find solutions to this, but we can't seem to find that we have the value and the strength to overcome it either. And when we start by reconnecting with what is valuable inside of us and why Baba has picked us, then actually that gives us the ability just to raise our consciousness again, move into a space where there is love present. And for me, I realize that, on this Brahmin journey, we can follow the disciplines. We can wake up for Amrit Vela. We can come to class. We can, you know, have a pure diet. We can have 7 to 7:30 meditation. But none of that means I have actually created a relationship with myself. And what does it mean to create a relationship with myself? First, yes, I have to recognize the soul that I am. But secondly, I have to begin to face myself with a lot of love. And until I'm able to face myself with a lot of love, I am not developing a relationship with where I am at in life at the moment. And this is fundamental because until we know exactly where we are in life, we can't find a way to progress. I'll give you an analogy. If you're in a field somewhere and you are lost, then often, if you call somebody for help, the first question they're going to ask you is, where are you at? Because until they know where you're at, they can't help you find a way out. And I think our relationship with Baba is exactly that, where Baba asks us, where are we at? Where are we at with our lives? Where are we at with our own efforts? Where are we at with our heart? And that is such an important aspect to really be grounded on, because until I know where I'm at, I'm not able to be guided by Baba in the right way. And often, you know, we have all been through, I'm sure, a period in our lives, if not going through it currently, where we're facing test papers and maybe we're carrying the weight of that in our hearts. And as we unload that, and maybe someone has written a letter to Baba and opened their hearts to Baba and felt lighter, because this expression of honesty with the Father is when the Father steps in to help us. And I think it was yesterday's Murli where Baba said, or today's Murli where Baba said, anybody who is, who is kind of lost in some way, he gives extra power to. When he sees, when you see your weakness, then he begins to give us extra power to be released from that weakness. And so, in this way, our job is to really inspect ourselves without judgment and then become detached. His job is then to be able to touch our intellects in such a way that actually we can begin to accept a teaching, a guidance from an instrument, whatever it may be, but we will be guided to what we need if we've opened our hearts up. And so honesty is probably the number one quality to progress on this journey, because the power of honesty frees our hearts and allows us to unburden what we've been carrying. But it also allows us to inspect ourselves. And Baba was emphasizing weaknesses the other day. And I feel that this is such an important and healthy thing to do in our Brahmin journeys, where we can really begin to tune in to the weaks and scars that are still dominant inside of ourselves. Because until we know where we are with those scars, they will keep on erupting inside of us. And so Baba emphasizes checking on a regular basis, and checking in the first instance means being honest about where I'm taking sorrow and where I'm giving sorrow. That's the first level of honesty I have to recognize within myself, in terms of where I'm breaking my sense of violence towards myself or towards others. And I think on this journey, Baba talks about the renunciation of vices at the start and pretty much in every single Murli. But when we first come to Baba, he says, you can renounce the vices. But anger is such that it takes time to understand what creates anger on our journey. It isn't a vice that we can easily renounce, because it comes in so many subtle forms and ways. And I feel that, for maybe quite a few of us, for what I've been observing in myself, what I've been observing in the retreats, anger is increasing in ways that maybe we haven't known, because we can certainly understand the outward expression of anger, but anger that is inside of us over a long period of time, that anger just sits in so many different ways. So one form of that anger is sadness, a feeling of being sad. Maybe an event has taken place in your life, and that event has left its mark on you because you have taken a lot of sorrow. And when that sadness sits in our hearts, it poisons our ability to transform ourselves, because it sits inside of us like a weight. And it is this sadness that we need to face, because we can carry this sadness over such a long period of time that it can become second nature. We don't realize that we're carrying this form of anger inside of us. Regret is another form of anger that we can carry in this journey. Disheartenment is a form of anger that we can carry. Regret, disheartenment, jealousy, these are all children of anger, and they will exist inside of us in so many different ways. And so I think it's a healthy thing to be able to recognize what frequencies of anger I'm carrying inside of myself at this time in my life, because that will allow me to see what the trigger of that anger is. And I think that's important as well, what the trigger of that anger is, and what is being triggered inside of me as a sanskar when that anger arises. And this checking is a good way for us to be able to open our hearts to Baba and to be able to share that this is what I'm going through. This is the level of honesty that I feel Baba needs from us, so that he can then help us to transform these sanskars. And some sanskars are going to need extended periods of silence, because these sanskars have been born out of big traumas that have taken place in our early childhood. And I know this because I have been lucky enough to have settled two traumas in my life in the last 8 years through the power of silence. And both have required an intensity in silence, a period of silence of a week, 2 weeks, to really allow these sanskars to erupt and to release eventually. And so I feel that if something has been repeatedly coming up in your lives over a period of time and it hasn't shifted, then there's an opportunity to really make extra effort on this simply by focusing in silence. Because whatever hasn't been able to be, be resolved has to erupt. And one of the signs that something is about to leave us is that it will come up in its most extreme form. So it will be triggered easily and it will be erupting easily. And often they will come in the form of relationships or difficult situations um, that will create fear inside or that will create anger inside. And so, in this way, we can begin to inspect what am I reacting to in life at the moment. And that will just give us a marker to the level of intensity of the feeling that I'm experiencing. And Daddy gave a really interesting definition once of what it means to take sorrow. And because someone had asked the question, Daddy, what does it mean to take sorrow? And she said, when I allow my feelings to be broken. And I found that really clear because if peace is the feeling we should have constantly, and if we break peace repeatedly, then we are coming into a space of violence. And so to let something go, I have to understand it. I can't just let something go until I have truly understood it. And silence gives us the opportunity to discriminate our feelings or the feelings that are arising as a result of a situation, as a result of a particular sanskar clash, whatever it may be, as or a circumstance or a challenge, whatever you may be going through. But when I'm able to discriminate these feelings, I'm able to A, understand what is happening in the self, but B, I'm able to now be honest about it. And it's like nobody has ever been able to accept something they don't understand. So if I don't understand my feelings, how can I accept them? How can I accept what is happening in my own heart? And this language of feelings, I think, is an important thing because the language of the heart is feelings. And when we talk about heart, we talk about deep feelings that just sit there over a long period of time and that can keep polluting the mind because they haven't been resolved. And so in the world, we are taught that thoughts create feelings, but actually, the journey of the self is telling us that these feelings create thoughts as well. So when these deep feelings sit inside of us, sadness, regret, rage, whatever it may be, that sit in our hearts, they will create the basis of our thoughts. There was um there was an interesting saying in the UK that when somebody is a hammer, everything is a nail. I don't know whether you've heard this before, but it's an interesting analogy that you can visualize that when we are angry, then our anger will always find an outlet. Everything will look like it's triggering our anger. And so our thoughts will be guided by that. And I think when we really understand this connection between feelings create thoughts, then we can take a greater level of responsibility towards looking at our feelings and cleansing them and being released from them. And there are three things that we have to go through as a process when we have repeatedly come into a state of violence again and again, and it's become like an ingrained pattern in our lives. One is that we have to acknowledge, and acknowledgement is the first step. Without acknowledgement, I can't accept, and without acceptance, I can't detach. Secondly, I have to seek forgiveness from the Father. And so this second process is a sharing of honesty of what I've discovered and learned about myself, but a genuine and sincere feeling that I now wish to transform this. And thirdly, there has to be a period of repentance. When we have gone against our religion of non-violence, there are always going to be consequences to the vibrational state that we're holding. So karmically, even if we haven't performed the action, being in a vibrational state where we are in anger, transmitting that outwards, we're going to suffer the consequences of that. And so at some level, repentance is a process we have to go through. And when those three steps have taken place, then we can start again. We can begin our journey knowing that we have fully settled whatever it is we have gone through. And so in this way, we can begin to lighten ourselves and almost take that next step in our journey. And at each step of our journey, we can really clean up. And this cleaning up is so essential because otherwise we're only adding layers of confusion and layers of rubbish. We cannot add anything pure onto an impure foundation. And so cleansing on a constant basis and inspecting the state of my heart and being able to understand and develop and deepen this relationship with myself is the key to strengthening my relationship with Baba, is the key to lightening my heart and to lightening my mind. So I'm going to pause here, just because I've covered what I think is enough for now. Um, and maybe if there are any questions, then I can pick up on some specific areas in a bit more detail.
Yeah. First of all, it was really wonderful. I just listened to you to hold my breath and try not to, really miss anything. So thanks a lot again on the behalf of all of us. Let me see if there are any questions in the chat box. There are many communications about the entering to the system, but I don't see any questions. Then maybe just let me see. I have my notes and yeah, here. So maybe I can ask a question while they are also thinking about it. I really love the way you just emphasize, how we can start to look at ourselves. Where, are we at? I love this question and to ask all of us. It's the first starting point, I understood. And as you are saying, it needs a lot of honesty, power to face, power to accommodate, and many, many other virtues and powers. And there is also a saying in the quality world, if you don't know where you are, you don't set a target, a destination where you are going for any improvement. So I really enjoy this phrase a lot. But can you elaborate a little bit, how we can do this process? how we can just look at ourselves, because it's not so easy most of the times. We are just blind and we have many black spots that we're not able to see.
Mm,
So if you can just share your maybe your own experiences, how we can do it, not
sure.
easily, but
Yeah.
in a time, of course.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I think until, and I guess when I see it in one sense, is we can spend a lot of time in extroversion. And when we're busy, 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 then the heart feels like it's being neglected. And often we keep ourselves busy so that we can avoid our hearts, actually. And until we are ready to become more introverted in nature, whether that's consciously on a silence break, on a retreat, where we decide, actually, I need the power of silence, then silence just begins to do its own work. So, in the first instance, silence just begins to cleanse. It just allows, when the mind is quiet, the heart just begins to lift some of the discomfort that it's been holding on to. And when that begins to arise, it will come up in the form of waste thoughts. It will come up in the form of certain memories. It will come up in the form of certain situations. So there'll always be a marker from your heart to show you what you need to pay attention to. It just needs the space, firstly. And that first phase is that phase of cleansing. The second phase is the phase of asking questions. And when we develop a relationship with somebody, we tend to ask very good questions. And when the heart has taken pain, then maybe there are certain questions we can ask the heart. And the more specific these questions, the more specific the response that the heart gives. And so, one question often to start this process is, what do you feel? That's a really good question to ask your heart. And feelings will come in so many different ways, but to microscopically understand the feelings you're experiencing and just to write them down, that acknowledgement will bring acceptance, a sense that I now know what that discomfort is in the self. When we recognize that there is emotion, pain being absorbed, then we also recognize that we've come into body consciousness and ego. And so, where ego is present, there will always be three things. One is fear, second is anger, and third is attachment. And so, I can begin to ask myself again specific questions when I've reacted to a situation. And that is, what is what do I fear and why? It's a really good question to ask myself. What do I fear in this situation and why? Because often anger will come, whether it's we are angry at somebody or angry at ourselves because of fear. And fear comes because there's a sense of loss because I'm attached to something. And so the next question after that is, what am I attached to? And attachment can come in very different and subtle ways. On one side, attachment can be I'm attached to something physically, but I can also be very attached to my opinions, attached to being right, having expectations in a particular situation. And when I can tune into this form of attachment that I have in a particular situation very clearly, then again, where am I at? It tells me clearly, this is what's flaring inside of you. This is the source of your anger. And so questions become the second and most important part of understanding my weakness before I can then hand it off to Baba. And that then becomes a way in which Baba then uses the honesty in which I've shared with him to touch me through the Murlis, to touch me in a particular class that I'm sitting in, because now my awareness is open to receiving help. because I have been honest. And so writing is one of the most powerful tools that I would recommend, because we cannot understand what is going on in our own minds, um, or make sense of something in our own minds. We have to allow the heart to really unburden itself on paper. And Baba had created this system of writing. If you go to Panda Bhavan, we all know we go to Baba's room, we write a letter, maybe finish whatever we want to finish in the year and give him our letter. In the same way, if we did letter writing on a nightly basis, in this way, where we can acknowledge what we've felt, where we've taken sorrow, and to give, then I think with these three questions, we can begin to tackle anything and really understand where I'm at, because then Baba will guide me out of it.
That's wonderful, really. Very systematic way how you just explain and show us the way. I'm sure everyone is very content. And I still don't see any questions coming from the participants. Uh, if you have any, please just share it in the chat box. This is a great opportunity. Just sharing all his experiences. No? Okay, so let me just leave it to you. Is there anything more you would like to share? Maybe just a real experience, because everybody would like to hear your experiences. You said you had been gone through many traumas and you
Yeah.
just deal with them. So
Mm.
if you can just elaborate a little bit more, I think we all appreciate a lot, so we
Sure.
can use our time in a worthwhile way.
Sure. Someone has just asked in the chat when the next
Yeah.
retreat on this is.
Okay.
It's a really good question. We're
Yeah.
planning, we tend to run 2 or 3 retreats a year at the lighthouse. And the next one will be in either May or June. So nothing's fixed yet, but keep an eye on our website. Actually, just keep in touch with us, and if you're in the UK, then you're very welcome to join. But they're Brahmin retreats. As far as experience is concerned, there's one particular experience that really was important for me, and this was a few years ago now, um, when I found myself reacting to 3 individuals in my life, and they displayed significant amounts of anger, and that just kept triggering my own anger. And I would somehow turn this anger inwards. Um, and so this was an interesting thing that I had to really deal with, because this sanskar was causing a lot of issues when it had erupted out of nowhere. All of a sudden, I just started to develop this sensitivity that I never previously had. And I can now see, or when I moved through the trauma, I could really begin to see that the drama was really benevolent, because it forced me to leave work at the right time so that I could start this silence period. And guess what came? COVID. COVID came literally as I left work. So I made a decision to have 3 weeks in silence in my own flat. And I decided that I wanted to, at the time, I think everyone was doing in New York, they were doing half an hour meditation at 10 o'clock, at 12 o'clock, at 2 o'clock, at 4 o'clock, at 7 o'clock. So I decided that that's what I wanted to follow. And I've been writing regularly to Baba, but somehow I wasn't in the mood to write. I didn't need this, but my body was telling me that I needed to face something here. And so I just started sitting in meditation and trying to sit in the seed form, and just in silence. And it would, like, day after day, it would just become more and more intense. Whatever was internally erupting just started to magnify and started to amplify. And I think on day 7 or 8, I woke up for Amrit Vela. I could barely last for 5 minutes. Forget the Murli. The Murli went in one ear and, and out of the other ear. And at 10 o'clock, I tried to sit for meditation, and, I lasted 5 minutes. And I said to myself that at 12 o'clock, I said, I need to sit down. But if I can't do this, I'm going out, Baba. And within 2 minutes, Baba got through. And by getting through, he actually, I felt such an immense feeling of love from him that I just cried and I cried and I cried. And it felt like so much sorrow was coming out. But what he also showed me was a childhood memory. And it was a childhood memory of when I got beaten by somebody, and that trauma had created a pattern inside of me that meant that if anybody showed me violence, I would internalize that violence. I would feel like I was to blame for it in some way. And so Baba showed me that memory, but also showed me what I was holding towards the three individuals. And all of that just released together. Now, the interesting thing about that experience was not just the intensity of what I needed to go through in silence, but that memory came up for me 6 months before. And it didn't attach, there wasn't any emotion attached to it. It was just a memory. But it was clearly that scene in the drama, or whatever was held as a child in that scene in the drama, my karmic account had to finish. And so this is what I needed in the drama to finish that karmic account. And until that point, I had to carry that reaction in my life for however many years. And so in this way, we carry, when Baba says this life is benevolent, it truly is, because we start our settlement in most cases as children. And they will then erupt in our adulthood until we can really begin to understand it compassionately. So that's one experience I wanted to share. But I think the important aspect of it is what it helped me do to move forward. Because not only was that experience completely flushed out and my relationship with these individuals completely transformed, but I found a new sense, almost as if my life had started again. It was like the next chapter in my relationship with Baba, and service just flourished to another level. There was a lot more richness, there was a lot more enthusiasm and energy that came in, and it was like I could do anything. And this level of inner harmony, I feel, was being rewarded by service, that Baba would constantly keep me busy in so much amazing service because there was harmony in the soul. And I feel that the gift of harmony is service. If we're able to preserve the atmosphere in a center of being harmonious, then Baba will reward us with service, service that will create impact. And that's the only thing we have to preserve, but we can only do it when there is harmony inside.
Wow, that's fantastic to hear. This really gives us a lot of courage and encouragement as well, and hope
And
that,
hope, yeah,
yeah, if he can do it, we
there's a
can
way
all
out.
do it. There's a way out, yes. But yeah, just let ourselves to be in that silent stage in a quite a long time. So we have to be very patient for that
I think
with
so, but
ourselves and with the drama as well.
mm,
Yes. There are a few questions. Let me just try to read. One is out of the five layers of the subtle body, which one is the most important one to focus?
Daddy used to say everything starts with the heart.
Heart, yes,
So I
yes.
feel that if we neglect our hearts, we won't be able, the conscience won't know what is right and wrong. The
Mm,
intellect won't work properly because it will repeatedly pull us to sorrow, and the mind will be confused. So a
mm,
blocked heart will create confusion. And so it's
mm.
important that if the faculty of, if the heart isn't working, that's the core of our being, then nothing
Mm.
else works.
Yes, that's true. That's true. Another one is, what is your relationship with all the drama, the two parts, Rama and Ravan part? Drama is not perfect because Ravan is not perfect, isn't it? But drama is accurate and beneficial. There is the lessons that I need to learn in order to leave the old sanskar of the bhakti period, isn't it? It's a quite a long question, but
Yeah.
would you like me to read again, or is
No,
it
no, no.
clear
I
enough?
can, yeah, I
Oh, you
think I
can also
understand.
read it. Yes, that's
Yeah.
true. That's true.
I'm just rereading it again so I can really
Okay,
understand it.
okay,
Bear with me.
fine.
Yeah, I mean, we know drama is accurate, but we also know that this is Ravan's kingdom. And so it's only in our imperfections that we can really become perfect. And so I feel that our journey to finding ourselves has to be through where we are. And we have to have faith in the drama, that the drama is benevolent. If, in the example that I shared, I could recognize the benevolence of the drama to give me that space to heal. I can recognize the benevolence of the drama to allow that eruption to take place in that moment so that that sanskar was able to really finish. Um, and also for me to have made the effort that I needed to, because nothing comes without effort. And so I think, my relationship for me is understanding drama, understanding what is happening in my drama. And that's important. What is my relationship with the dramas that are affecting me? And to really own it. I think that's the key thing, is to recognize that if I'm responding to it through the vices, then I'm only increasing it. But if I can just step back, understand what is creating that inside of me, and then start to work with it from a benevolent perspective and with Baba's help, then there is benefit in the lessons. But we have to stop reacting to it in order to see the benefit in the lessons.
So everything starts with us.
Everything starts with us, right?
We have to take the first step.
I
As
think so,
Baba is
yeah.
saying, if you take the
Always
first step with courage, then I can help with my thousand arms.
100%.
That's true. I think yeah, there was one question just come up. Can you please share your practice on detached observer? When storms of the Maya come, important not to feel guilty and not to dislike the storms, but accept them. The soul that is this coming to leave me, yeah, to leave me. That's it.
It's a good question.
Yes, yes, right.
I think if we really think of our perfect form for a second, then we will realize that in our perfect form, we haven't got the baggage of our past that comes in the way. So we will naturally be detached. And so the practice of the detached observer interestingly, you will be naturally detached when a scene takes place and you're not reacting to it. Yeah, you just see it as a scene, but it's not affecting you because actually you are not carrying anything of your past that's erupting from that scene. So the detached observer piece comes in for me, I think, from a perspective of when I've reacted and I'm coming into feelings, and now I have to then step back and be detached. And in order for me to step back and be detached in that scene, I have to acknowledge the influence that scene is having on me emotionally, what the emotions are, how it's affecting me, and what am I putting out. And that's me taking complete ownership of what is happening inside my world. And only then can I accept. And once acceptance takes place, you will be naturally detached. That doesn't mean the situation has gone away. That doesn't mean the situation is resolved, but it means now that I accept what it's done to me or what it's triggering inside of me, but that it also exists in this drama and something I need to face. And this is when I can use Baba to give whatever I've learnt, and then Baba will give me that guidance so I can take that first step of courage. So honesty is the first step, courage is the second step, and faith is the third. And those three are necessary for success. And Dadi used to always say she carries faith, honesty, and courage in a kit bag with her. And I can see why. Because she said you need success when only all three are present, and only then success will be present.